Hey guys, what is up? We are now in the fourth part of Kings and Generals, the Second Crusade series. And if you want to watch the original video by Kings and Generals, the link to his video is down in the description down below. It is the first link you'll see. And if you enjoy my content and want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and maybe consider joining the Patreon or as a YouTube member. Now with that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Let us watch The Second Crusade, Part 4 by Kings and Generals.
When Venetian crusaders assisted the Latins during the siege of Tyre in 1123, King Baldwin II of Jerusalem and Count Edessa Josselin were both ambushed in two separate incidents by Il-Ghazi's son and Atabeg of Aleppo, Belek Ghazi. In both cases, each Frankish noble was taken as a prisoner and held in the Armenian stronghold of Carpet. The capture of such highly situated Latin leaders put the fate of the entire Kingdom of Jerusalem into potential jeopardy. Fortunately, King Baldwin's previous reforms allowed for the temporary stability of the realm. However, the news of the Crusaders' successes in Tyre hadn't reached the monarch in Carpet, who was becoming increasingly worried about his absence in Jerusalem. While Baldwin was uncertain of the Outremer's future, Josselin used his good reputation among the local Armenian population. Ever sympathetic to Josselin's tolerant policy towards Armenians in his county, they were convinced by him to sneak into the castle as pilgrims, murder the Turkic garrison, and free both leaders.
Wow, holy crap, that's awesome. Yeah, this dude rolled a nat 20 in persuasion, and dang, you know what I thought? I thought they were gonna go to the ransom route if they could, like try to ransom them. I mean, I guess that kind of depends if El-Ghazi's son would even allow them, because they are really high level prisoners. But dang, I did not expect him to basically persuade the Armenians to straight up murder their dang, dude. Nat 20 on persuasion, good on him. I did not expect that.
However, despite being liberated, Baldwin and Josselin realized that even if they all managed to escape the fortress, they would be quickly detained by Belek's swift Turkoman riders. Even more worryingly, word of their prison break had already reached the Atabeg, who sent an entire army to retake Carpet.
Oh.
At this point, Baldwin II convinced Josselin to escape first in order to find help, while he and the Armenians would buy Josselin some time to escape and defend the castle. To make sure Josselin would be recognized, Baldwin gave him his own ring and 3 Armenian servants to make sure he would safely reach the Frankish territory. Moving only by night to prevent detection, the Count of Edessa managed to reach the Euphrates. Exhausted and weakened by the captivity, Josselin could not swim, but using their wineskins as floats, they all managed to cross the water and reach the opposite shore.
This has been one of the coolest prison breaks I've seen on this channel's history. Like, this is really actually cool. But I'll say though, like, Baldwin, I mean, no offense to Josselin, I mean this in no offense, but wouldn't it be better for Baldwin to escape since he's the king? I mean, the earlier parts of this series set up Baldwin as basically the main guy of the Crusader states, not only of Jerusalem, but all the other states basically were his vassals in practice, and he was also had way more influence and power over them. So, like, my idea is, like, wouldn't it be better if I guess if I judged it by that merit, he's the more important of the two, so wouldn't him escaping be the higher priority? I mean, maybe he wanted Josselin to get away, maybe he wouldn't have accepted that, but I don't know, that's just my thinking. Like, I feel like Baldwin, if I had to measure the two, maybe is slightly the more important, so maybe him getting away is better, but oh well.
After reaching his county, Josselin revealed himself to his wife and court at Tebussul. After a brief reunion, he immediately rushed to Antioch to seek assistance, but because of the losses at the Battle of Ager-Saint-Gueny and Hab, Patriarch Bernard, who governed the Antiochian Principality in Le Bour's absence, could not provide the knights Joscelin had been so hoping for. After several failed attempts to raise the army in Antioch, Joscelin rode in haste to Jerusalem. Upon arrival, he devoted his chains at the altar of Calvary, thanking God for his fortunate escape. Next, he informed Patriarch Gaumont and Constable Eustace, who had governed the kingdom during the king's absence, about Baldwin's situation in Armenia, asking for troops for a rescue mission, to which they agreed. With his rescue party in hand, Joscelin rode north in haste to Baldwin's relief, but by the time he reached the Euphrates, it was already too late. Baldwin's resistance at Kirpurt had fallen apart faster than expected. In Joscelin's absence, Belec's engineers had dug a tunnel and managed to undermine a section of the wall that allowed the Artikid warriors to enter the castle. All Armenians who had assisted in the coup were killed by Belec, while Baldwin II himself was transferred to a more guarded fortress at Haran. The Latin army of Joscelin could not reach Le Bourg that far without risking a possible ambush or a major battle. Still undeterred, the Count of Edessa raided the Aleppo countryside, demanding the King of Jerusalem's release. However, after seeing the futility of his actions, he decided to return to Tobussel. Although Joscelin's attempt to rescue the king failed, Belec could not exploit his victory, mainly because of the revolt of Menbiji's governor. Realizing he could not afford to lose that city, he sent his loyal general Timotash to defeat the rebels' army at the city walls. Timotash quickly mobilized his men and forced the enemy outside of Menbij, scoring a decisive victory. But Menbij's citadel was still in the hands of the rebels, led by the governor's brother Issa. Desperate, the rebels asked the Count of Edessa for aid. Joscelin moved with his army to capture the city, but was intercepted by Belec's army and was soundly defeated under the city walls.
Oh, dang.
Belec then proceeded to continue the siege, but was hit by an arrow from citadel defenders and died shortly afterwards.
Holy crap. Okay, so I was thinking like, okay, so Jocelyn can't do anything now, he just lost his army. But considering the fact Belec just died, then dang, unless someone takes his place immediately, that's just a complete disaster on all fronts.
With the death of Belec Ghazi, the Artikid state was yet again embroiled in internal fighting. During this power struggle, El-Ghazi's son, Timotash, came to power as the next Atabeg. Upon realizing that he could benefit immensely from Baldwin's release, he entered into negotiations with the Franks. The king and the Latin realm were represented by Joscelin and Baldwin's wife, King Morphia of Melitene. The Munkadites of Shaizar, who were attempting to better their relations with the Latins, served as mediators, going so far as to send some of their own people as hostages to Timotash. After intense talks, the Atabeg of Aleppo agreed to Baldwin's return in exchange for the strategic castles of Athareb, Kafatab, Zadana and Azaz, an exorbitant sum of 80,000 dinars, the exchange of valuable hostages to guarantee the terms would be honoured, and a promise that both Latin leaders would jointly attack the local Bedouin chieftain, Debais ibn Sadaka. These demands were exceptionally harsh for the Crusader states in Syria.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like, especially the cities that a lot of the earlier conflict was for these strong fortified cities in Antioch, right? So now they've all fallen back to you know, Frankish hands. Yeah, but it makes sense though. He literally has the king, so I guess he can dictate the terms, right? Yeah.
As it meant handing every major border stronghold they had captured back into Muslim hands. Reluctantly, the Latin delegation agreed, and after 16 months of captivity, Baldwin II was finally released in August 1124. When Le Bourg left Haran, he realized just how unfavorable the bargain had been for the Franks. If all the eastern border fortifications were to be taken back into Aleppo's sphere of influence, this could make Timotash the greatest threat to Latin security in northern Syria since El-Ghazi. Knowing too well that the Lord of Mardin and Aleppo wouldn't execute young Josselin and Joveta, he decided not to honor his obligations.
Oh,
All
wow. Dang, that's pretty messed up. After all that, just to lie, dang, that's not really honorable. I understand his concerns, but that's what happened when he got himself captured, like, Dang, that's messed up, dude. But like I get it though. Like I understand exactly. Like those cities, those border fortresses is kind of the start of all these hostilities, right? Losing them, fighting for them, and now essentially losing them through diplomacy. Yeah, that's like the one of the hugest like blows that could be done to the Crusaders, but that's still messed up. Considering they had like they agreed and everything. Well, I guess Baldwin himself didn't agree. He was a hostage, but I'm not sure if you want to use that as a loophole. Like, well, they agreed on me. Like, I don't know, man. Like, to me, that's like now war is definitely gonna happen, right? Like, Timurtash isn't gonna just be idle. I don't imagine he would be if he found out that the Franks backstabbed him. So now war just has to happen, right?
King Baldwin needed was a pretext, which he easily found. Prince of Antioch Bohemond II had turned 16 years old and could thus inherit the principality. However, he was still in Italy. This meant that Baldwin le Boar could still act in the boy's name as Antioch's regent. Since Baldwin couldn't bargain for Antiochene territory in the absence of Bohemond II, the legal ruler of Antioch, he officially asked Antioch's patriarch Bernard for permission. Naturally, the patriarch refused to hand the eastern parts of the principality to the Muslims, so Baldwin II gladly used this factor as a pretext to break his oath, assembling forces from Jerusalem, Tripoli, Antioch and Edessa, and preparing for an upcoming showdown.
Dang, that's wild to me. Man. Yeah, Timurtash is like, dang, I got a great deal, and everyone's like, nope, we're not gonna honor it. Dang, that's just wild to me. I'm like, dang, holy crap. That shocked me. I'm sorry that I keep, like, harping on it, but that kind of caught me off guard.
Doing the opposite of what he had been expected to do per the terms of his release, Baldwin allied himself with the Bedouin leader Dubaïs, thus adding Bedouin tribes to the Frankish host.
Wow.
Together they planned
Dang, literally reneged on everything.
To take the initiative and siege Aleppo before Timurtash could respond from his main power base at Mardin. The situation inside the city looked very promising for the Latins, as the city's great leader Ridwan was dead, the Artikid clan split, and Aleppo was consumed by a power struggle between factions. Internal divisions between Al-Ghazi's successors were used by Ridwan's son, Sultan Shah ibn Radwan, who rose in rebellion against Timurtash and rode into the Bedouin Crusaders' camp, hoping to be installed as the rightful ruler of
Dude, literally everyone is joining Baldwin to fight Timurtash.
Aleppo. The idea of installing a pro-Frankish ruler was too tempting a prospect for the Christians to refuse. However, they first had to ensure Shaizar's neutrality in the south and ease minor tensions between the Munkadites and the Principality. After these matters were settled, the Latins marched straight to Aleppo with their Bedouin and other Muslim allies. Baldwin attacked from Atta, while Josselin marched from Tel Bashir with Dubaïs. The attack from both sides took Aleppo's forces by surprise, forcing them to hide behind the city walls. On the 19th of October 1124, Baldwin, Josselin and Dubaïs's groups all rejoined under the walls of Aleppo and encircled the city. Meanwhile, the situation inside the city was getting dire for its citizens. The city itself was not prepared for a siege, morale was at an all-time low, and even worse for the defenders, some of Ibn Radwan's supporters in the city were eager to open the gates for their sultan. Even more worryingly for Aleppo, Timurtash decided to stay in Mardin and neglect the Franco-Bedouin siege in favor of securing his inheritance from his brother, Suleiman of Myafarakin.
Wow.
The abandonment of Aleppo would cost the Artukid Atabeg dearly. In desperation, the citizens of Aleppo wrote a letter to Timurtash pleading for help. Not only was the Lord of Mardin unwilling to send aid, but he was angered by Aleppo's willingness to capitulate, and ordered the city's emissaries to be arrested. However, the Aleppo ambassadors managed to escape from prison, and in desperate need of allies, went to Mosul, begging its Atabeg for immediate rescue, in return for pledging their allegiance to the Seljuk warlord. Mosul's Atabeg, Aksunkur al-Busuki, was eager to take his revenge on the Latins for his defeat at Samin in 1115, and was buoyed by the opportunity to undermine the Artukids by seizing Aleppo for himself. Thus, he marched westward to relieve the city.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so that's a part of the Seljuk Empire. So now the Latin state... Okay, this is taking a lot of turns. Okay, so Timurtash ain't gonna help. So now the Seljuk Empire, which seems to be a bigger enemy, at least in terms of landmass. I'm not sure about the... I know that they're kind of on the decline, but still. So now they have to contend with them. Alright, this is a real make it or break it for Baldwin. Baldwin definitely, like I said, the beginning of the series, he kind of came across as like the main guy of the Crusader states. And then he got captured like very anticlimactically, but now he's back. So I guess he needs to kind of like really reestablish himself now.
With a huge army at his disposal, and with the blessing of the Sultan of the Great Seljuks, Mahmudi Muhammadi Malikzar, he easily convinced other Muslim powers to his cause, receiving additional forces from Emir of Homs, Kirkan, and Tughtekin of Damascus. The Latin sources of William of Tyre and Fulcher of Shat state that Aksunkur's force numbered 15,000 strong, while the Armenian Matthew of Edessa indicates that the Atabeg of Mosul came to command over 40,000 men. Though Matthew of Edessa's numbers are probably overestimated, a 15,000-man army was still formidable by the Outremer's standards. This Seljuk host managed to reach Aleppo at the end of January 1124. Meanwhile, the besieging Latin and Bedouin army had begun to fall apart. At first, the Bedouin chieftain Debais had intended to block Busuki's force on the Euphrates, while Baldwin II continued the siege, believing that the city's capture was imminent. However, in a matter of only a few days, it became apparently clear that Labor had been incorrect, and the city's fall was not imminent. Despite Ibn Radwan's supporters inside the city, most of its defenders didn't give in, and the siege dragged on for long enough for Aksunkur's army to arrive.
Oh no.
Upon learning about the relieving force, the Franks and the Bedouins knew that Busuki possessed numerical superiority. Baldwin didn't want to risk an open battle under Aleppo's walls. Instead, the Bedouin groups retreated east, while Baldwin moved his Latin force back to the Atharem, after which he went to Jerusalem to celebrate his return from 2 years of absence.
Oh,
Satisfied with his maneuver, al-Busuki decided to stop the pursuit and return to Aleppo to celebrate his victory.
Okay, yeah, very anticlimactic. I almost expected a showdown. But I guess I can't blame Baldwin for being a bit cautious, so... Alright, that kind of amounted to nothing. That's a little anticlimactic, I'll admit. But, oh well, I guess the Seljuks are just gonna have Aleppo now. At least the Crusaders didn't lose anything in that conflict. So, okay, cool.
The time being. The siege of Aleppo had been lifted. Freed from its troubles, the city's government submitted itself to Busuki, surrendering to him its formidable citadel, treasury, and all Latin hostages previously owned by Timurtash. With his power base in northern Syria and Mesopotamia secured at Artukid expense, Busuki again turned his attention to Antioch's territory, where he intended to continue Timurtash's policy of demanding the handover of its border strongholds. Leading his troops from Mosul and Aleppo,
Dang, these border strongholds are going through it, guys. But now they were afraid of Timurtash having those border strongholds. now they have to worry about the Seljuks having them. Yeah, now they have to fight because they don't seem like they're gonna just like go away now.
Atabeg started his campaign by striking the Principality of Antioch at its southeastern frontier, capturing the fortresses of Al-Bara and Kavatab after a short siege. After securing both of these castles, the Lord of Mosul and Aleppo marched north with his ally Toktekin to attack the Antiochian fortress of Zardana.
Toktekin has been around since the very beginning. Yeah, he's been quite the reoccurring nemesis for the Crusader states.
Despite being attacked by this enormous army, Zardana was able to withstand the siege, and its defenders even managed to send word to Baldwin. When the news reached Antioch and later Jerusalem, King Baldwin yet again rallied all Crusader states under his banner, including the Tripolitan contingent of Pons and Chaucelan's Latins of Edessa. In addition, the Crusader forces were joined by an Armenian contingent led by Duke Levin from Cilicia. In total, the Franco-Armenian forces, claimed by Latin historians, numbered around 1,100 knights and 2,000 infantrymen. However, it is very likely that these historians mentioned only Frankish warriors, neglecting their Armenian counterparts. Meanwhile, an Armenian author estimated the size of Baldwin's army to be 1,300 knights and 4,000 infantry overall, which is probably the largest possible capacity of the Christian forces.
But if so, then they're still outnumbered, right? For sure. Like, that's the thing about the Crusader states, like, they don't seem to have, like, infinite manpower, at least if they suffer a lot of defeats. Like, one battle crippled Antioch for quite a while. They're still kind of crippled in a sense after their major defeat from, like, the first part of this series. So it seems like the Crusaders, while strong, don't seem to have, like, a lot of numerical power, and it seems like kind of like a glass cannon in a sense that if you crush them, like, decisively, it's gonna be a bit harder for them to rally, right? I don't know. Like, that's kind of the impression I'm getting. I could be completely wrong, but, you know, either way, like, they're gonna have to really, like,
Latin and Armenian forces were gathered near Antioch. King Baldwin received news that al-Basuki redirected his focus from Zardana to Azaz. Not willing to let his mighty fortress slip into Aleppo's hands, he left Antioch with his joint forces and reached Cyrrhus, where he ordered his troops to leave their baggage train behind to speed up their march. Meanwhile, the besieged garrison of Azaz knew it could not hold for long, mainly due to the constant bombardment of 12 ballistae brought by Basuki from Aleppo. But on the 11th of June 1125, as the Muslims were just about to break through Azaz's defences, Baldwin's army finally arrived, approaching from Basuki's rear. Jerusalem had arrived, and one of the bloodiest battles of the Outremer was about to begin.
Dang, okay. Alright, I'm hyped. So, I'll say this, before Baldwin was very, like, he didn't want to fight these guys due to numerical superiority. But now he's forced to where he needs to fight them. And it seems like they still have numerical superiority, so I'm wondering what trick. Like, Baldwin surely must be thinking about a way to defeat them. Like, okay, how do I defeat them? Like, you know, strategizing and whatnot. So I'm wondering if he has something up his sleeve, because it seems like he's gonna need a trick or two in order to pull off a decisive victory, if that's the rate it's gonna go anyways.
Sources differ on the exact outcome of the battle. However, what we do know is that the sudden approach of the Latin army must have heavily impacted al-Basuki's decisions, as Baldwin II managed to corner the Muslims between Azaz's walls and the Christian army.
But that actually might be it. They moved so quick, they caught the enemy unguarded. So, if the trend of, like, more well, he did mention this is gonna be a battle, because, okay, I just thought they might just leave now. Kind of like before, another anticlimactic moment, just leave. But I guess Baldwin still has a pretty great opportunity. If he caught them off guard, then maybe he could, you know, inflict some type of damage. I guess we'll see.
According to Fulcher of Chartres, Baldwin deployed his army in two lines. The left side of the front line was filled with knights and soldiers from Edessa commanded by Count Josselin, while the right flank was led by Tripolitan troops commanded by Lord Pont of Tripoli. The second line was commanded by King Baldwin le Boar and his forces from Jerusalem, most likely accompanied by Armenian auxiliaries. Baldwin's army pitched a camp outside of the city and even managed to establish a line of communication with the Edessan defenders. From this point on, the Latin sources of William of Tyre and Fulcher claim that the battle took place only in the fortress's vicinity. But Armenian chronicler Matthew of Edessa shares a different, more detailed, and perhaps less glamorous version of this engagement. Matthew states that after the Latins and Armenians set up their camp, Basuki and Togtekin's army turned from Azaz and sent their archers and horse archers to barrage the freshly arrived opponents. For 3 days straight, the Franks and Armenians in the camp were hammered by the Turkomans' arrows, constantly hearing shouts and war cries from opposing sides. Even worse, foraging parties riding outside the camp were forced to return empty-handed due to possible casualties. Things were not looking good for Baldwin, who had left all his army's food behind with the baggage train in Cyrrhus.
Oh my gosh. And now they're like surrounded by horse archers. Eesh.
Soon the Crusaders were faced with the prospect of starvation.
Oh no.
Thinking the Franks were already demoralized by hunger, Basuki withdrew his archers and ordered them to charge down the camp head-on. A quickly deployed Frankish formation was immediately crushed by the impending Muslim force. After initial fighting, it was clear that the numerically superior Muslim force would eventually overwhelm the Crusaders. However, just as things were looking the most dire for the Christians, King Baldwin developed a plan. He knew that the enemy had more than twice the numbers the Franks and Armenians had. So the Monarch of Jerusalem decided to cast the proverbial die and announced an orderly retreat in the direction of Atharim. However, this was no true withdrawal. In fact, Baldwin was using the Seljuk tactic of false retreat to lure Basuki out of Azaz, so that the Muslim army would lose its cohesion.
Oh. Okay, this is good. For a second there, I'm like, Baldwin showed up just to get destroyed, but no way. He seems to have a trick or two up his sleeve. Gonna take one from the old playbook of the enemy of the feigned retreat, which was beyond successful. I feel like the first Crusade series was nothing but feigned retreats when we were watching it, you know. Okay, that we'll see if it works though, but at least he's trying to do something.
Unsurprisingly, the Atabeg of Mosul took the bait, and, thinking that the Franks had escaped the battlefield, followed in pursuit of his Christian enemies. While moving southwest to Atharib, Baldwin received a firing beacon from Josselin's men in Azaz, reporting the King of al-Basuki's decision to follow them. During the chase, the Muslim...
Smart. Okay, I'm liking this. He's setting up the trap and he's taking the bait. Okay, this is interesting.
Forces divided into their own groups, just as the King of Jerusalem had hoped they would. When his army was 2 miles south of Azaz, Baldwin ordered his men to halt, take a quick rest, and turn around towards their pursuers. Matthew of Edessa mentions that the Latins were desperate for food and water, so in order to acquire any possible provisions, they were willing to fight to the death.
Oh, dang. Okay, that's like really great. No better morale boost in terms of fighting than you're not gonna eat or drink until you fight and win. So, desperation. Using desperation to cause your men to be as, like, to have a fighting spirit as much as possible. Alright, that's a great way to utilize, your army's, like, growing hunger and, you know, thirst for your advantage. So that's smart. At least you don't have to worry about anyone breaking. The morale is there, right? Okay, I'm happy, because for a second there I was like, dang, what happened to Baldwin? Like, after he got captured anticlimactically, I was like, okay. I mean, granted, the battle isn't done yet, we'll see what happens, but like, you know, I was like, dang, Baldwin, you're starting to fall off, but alright. Good to see this. He might have the best comeback I've seen in a bit.
As the disorganized and separate detachments from Mosul, Aleppo, Damascus and Homs met the Latins, they found themselves exhausted. Moreover, they were almost entirely out of arrows, which meant that they would have no choice but to face the Latin knights and footmen in melee combat.
Oh no. Yeah, horse archers, I think horse archers are really OP, but hearing that and now knowing they have to contend in melee, which knights I think are better at, that's not... Oh my goodness.
It was at this moment when King Baldwin, emboldened by his foe's fatigue, ordered the battle trumpets to blare, signifying a charge on Basuki's men. The Edessan and Tripolitan troops stormed forward from the left, the men of Jerusalem from the center, and the men of Antioch from the right. All of them descended with fury on disorganized Turkic warriors. According to Muslim chronicler al-Basuki, the Muslim warriors at first attempted to keep their distance and fired upon the charging Latins with whatever arrows they had, but realizing the distance between them and the Franks was too short, the Mosul and Damascene troops decided to form an improvised line to prepare for the enemy's charge. In a matter of minutes, the Latins and Armenians plowed through the Muslim line. A desperate melee soon ensued, and with heavier armor and better skill in hand-to-hand combat, the Crusaders developed a clear upper hand over their eastern counterparts.
Dang.
Soon, the Latins and Armenians from Cilicia started to gain ground. It was Count Josselin, reportedly fighting like a ferocious roaring lion, that first managed to break through the enemy line, spreading terror amongst the Mosul and Damascene armies. In a short period of time, the Muslim warriors dispersed all over the plain.
Oh my god.
Victorious.
Dude, holy crap. This was a great comeback from Baldwin. The dude still got it. I'm happy to see that. Dang, dude, this was a great, just that whole thing. Like, I was worried for a bit. He abandoned his baggage train, you know, was seemingly caught as his camp was being raided, but he used those seemingly unfavorable, like, factors to his advantage, luring his enemy to a trap and using the fact that his men would be fighting at like peak ferocity for, you know, to gain food and water. Like he turned it all around. Wow, that was great. That was really cool.
Baldwin and the rest of the Latin knights followed his Edessan count, and many of their opponents were hunted down all the way to Azaz. Some of the Latin contingents chased the Muslim warriors all the way to the outskirts of Aleppo. All in all, although sources differ, the Muslim army likely lost anywhere between 2,000 and 7,000 warriors, making the Battle of Azaz one of the greatest bloodbaths in the history of the Crusades and one of the worst military disasters in Seljuk history.
Wow.
The battle was a total victory for the Latins and Armenians, and a testament to Baldwin Labor's strategic genius, which shone through even in the most hopeless situation. More importantly, Baldwin II seized al-Basuki's and Toktekin's camps, complete with all the goods left behind by the Seljuk warlords. Its value was estimated by Latin sources to be around 80,000 Byzants, thus providing the Latins with a better bargaining position in the conflict. Meanwhile, Basuki returned beaten and humiliated all the way back to Mosul, remaining in Aleppo with only his son Masud as its governor. As the dust settled, the Christian force retreated back to Antioch in glory, while Prince Levin returned back to Armenia. Both parties planned to renew the fighting. However, in doing so, both rulers encountered severe obstacles. Al-Basuki's authority was in shambles, and reconstructing his devastated army seemed almost impossible. Meanwhile, in the Principality of Antioch, the rightful heir, Bohemond II, had arrived from Italy in 1126 to claim Antioch from his father, Bohemond I. This forced Baldwin to resign from Antioch's regency and from absolute control over its manpower and resources. Moreover, due to Bohemond's temper, King Baldwin's attention would have to shift in another direction. All these factors forced both leaders to settle around peace talks, during which a line was drawn between the interests of Antioch and Aleppo. All of the bordering strongholds of Atharib, Al-Bara, Zardana and Azaz remained in Latin hands except for Kafatab, which was handed to Aleppo. Through the looted goods gathered from Muslim camps in the battle's aftermath, Baldwin II was able to pay the ransom for his daughter Javette and Josselin's son. This ransom went fully into al-Basuki's pocket and not Timurtash's, which the Artukid of Mardin took as a great offense, but ultimately there was nothing he could do. Fate was...
Okay, so that's very interesting. A very interesting position for Baldwin. Great victory, but now I guess he doesn't have all the control over everything like he did before, which I'm not sure how that's gonna... I'm not sure how this is gonna go on, but I'm wondering like if Bohemon's gonna be a new factor, because before it was basically everyone followed Baldwin. Baldwin basically had control of, like I said, all the Crusader states. He basically was, I keep saying this, but like in practice, kind of the king of everything, you know? I feel, because they were all basically his vassals. He could just rally every manpower, but now it seems like, now that Bohemon's there, I'm wondering if that's gonna affect anything down the line, since Bohemond doesn't seem like the kind of guy to just fall fully in line with Baldwin from that exchange I just got there. So I'm not sure if that's like an ill omen of what's gonna happen later, you know what I mean? But still, good on Baldwin, dude. Like, Baldwin the First was a great king, for Jerusalem, and Baldwin the Second is proving to be a great king himself. And then there's it was Baldwin the Fourth, right, who was the leper? He was great too, so quite already, I don't know if there was a Baldwin the Third, though. Wait, of course there had to be numerically. Wait, Baldwin of Jerusalem. Alright, there was a third Baldwin, obviously, though I don't know if, his rule was as... Oh, he died really young, 33 years old. Oh, wow. Sorry, I'm just, like, looking at this now. Okay, I don't want to read all that now, so I'm not sure if he was good, but if so, there are already 3 great Baldwins. If there's a fourth, if the third proved to be good, which I'm gonna have to look off once this video's over, then yeah, that's quite a great run for the Kingdom of Jerusalem still, you know? At least I know 3 of the Baldwins were competent and got good results, so I don't know. That's really cool. Like I said, I'm gonna read about Baldwin the Third after this video's done. To see how history has judged him. But like I said, good on Baldwin, bro. That was impressive. I'm glad he rebounded from his earlier defeat, his earlier capture, which kind of, I think when he got captured anticlimactically, that kind of lowered his aura, but he gained it back. So he had a great rebound.
Also unkind to Aksunkur, as he was publicly murdered by a group of Nizari assassins in the Great Mosque of Mosul, leaving all his power in the hands of his young son Masud.
Dang. It looks like an Assassin's Creed picture there. Man, you know, I have the Assassin's Creed, like, French game. I never played it, I haven't. It's the only Assassin's Creed game I have owned, and I've never played it. But, yeah, I might want to, like, start that now and see how that goes. But either way, sorry, it just reminded me of Assassin's Creed.
Baldwin, on the other hand, had returned to Jerusalem as a victor, and was heralded by huge celebrations upon his return. Along the way, the king built a fortress near Beirut on Mount Glavianus to better guard the Tripolitan route from Antioch to Jerusalem. After splendid celebrations in the Holy City, King Baldwin II Labor planned his next moves with one particular foe in mind, the Emirate of Damascus.
That's a good move, because Damascus has been quite the thorn on the Crusaders' side. Toltecan is like constantly been an enemy. So I think this is a great move from Baldwin. I think it finally needs to be addressed, Damascus, you know?
Overall, the Battle of Azaz significantly reshaped the balance of power in Syria. The Latins were able to regain their power and prestige, restoring Antioch and Edessa to their previous conditions before the Battle of Agère-Sanguinis in 1119. This battle had finally allowed Baldwin and his realm to change its policy from defensive to offensive expansion on all its fronts. On the Muslim side, it would also mark a turning point, as from the chaos of constant warfare in Syria, new figures would rise to reshape the Outremer forever.
Okay, so I'm gonna end the video right here, and we'll continue with part 5 tomorrow. Until then, I'll see you guys then. Bye, everyone.